Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get the webinar rolling. This is Victoria Beal with the Ohio LTAP Center, and I am so pleased to have with us one of our federal partners, James Colyar, who is going to be presenting for you on crowdsourcing for operations. This topic is a very important one for Ohio, as it's going to continue to assist us in moving forward our transportation system and the most efficient way possible, utilizing technologies that are now available to us. So without further ado, I'm going to go over just a couple of housekeeping items, and then I will turn things over to James. When you joined, hopefully you saw a chat pod on the left-hand side of your screen. And if you did not, please look for a round circle with a thought bubble in it on the bottom left-hand corner and click on that so you can open up the chat pod, which will be on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. This is how we ask that you please pose any questions throughout the webinar. We are going to keep everyone muted while James is presenting, and then once we get to the end of the webinar presentation, we'll be opening the phone line for questions. But if you could please just pose your questions there throughout the presentation, and I will read them off to James as he's presenting and has the opportunity for me to interject with questions. The other thing is we do have recording occurring with this webinar. If we are successful, I will send a link out to the recording to everyone. There's no promises the recording is going to be successful though, so we encourage you to stay on the webinar and ask your questions because you're here and you're able to participate live. So I believe that's all my housekeeping items. James, are you ready?
Yes, I'm here, Victoria. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Victoria, for a great job organizing this and for allowing me to participate. It's a privilege to talk to you all today. I'm going to be talking about crowdsourcing for operations. It's one of the innovations under the new Everyday Counts, or you may have heard the acronym EDC Round 5 initiatives. Advance my slide here. Hopefully it works. Okay, and I can't see the chat pod the way that Skype is set up for me. I just see my own screen. But Victoria will help me when the questions come in, and we'll do our best to try to get them all answered for you.
Absolutely.
Great. So my name is James. I've been with Federal Highway for about 18 years now, and been in different offices over the years, but right now, the last 7 years or so, I'm with our headquarters Office of Operations, and it's been a lot of fun, a lot of technology and changes over the years. What I wanted to talk today is the agenda here is give you a quick overview of EDC if you haven't heard of it, a quick overview of operations and crowdsourcing. What is crowdsourcing? Then I'll go a little bit more into crowdsourcing for operations. What are some of the opportunities and considerations? And then how, if your agency is interested in crowdsourcing, how you could advance and what the available support is. And I'm the current lead of the EDC 5 Crowdsourcing for Operations initiative, but it's really a team effort. We've got quite a few folks from Federal Highway, Paul Jodin from our headquarters office, and folks from our resource center that are involved as well. We've also got a bunch of state and local experts from around the country. So before I get into it, I want to just a little fun question here. You probably are familiar with the old game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and Regis Philbin made it popular. If you're familiar with it, kind of their unique part of this game show is it's a trivia show, quiz show, but also there's these lifelines. There's 3 lifelines: a 50-50 lifeline, a phone a friend lifeline, and an ask the audience lifeline. And these are what helps the contestant when they get stuck on a question. So my question to all of you right now, and Victoria's going to pull up a poll question on this here, is how often is the Ask the Audience lifeline correct in the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So you can go ahead and pull that up, Victoria, and let everyone give their best guess of what you think the answer is. 95% of the time, 50% of the time, 30% of the time, or 75% of the time.
Yeah, and I've got it set so everyone can see the responses that are coming in on the poll too. So far it looks like 75% of the time is winning. And 50% of our respondents have chosen that.
Okay. So a lot of people think answer D, 75% of the time.
Just let me know how long you want me to leave it up for.
Okay. Probably okay to close it. There's
we
not going to be
75% of the time, and 47% of our respondents chose that.
Okay. We're not going to grade you, so don't worry here. But there is a correct answer, and before I give you the correct answer, I'll come back to this question. But first I want to give you a quick overview of
We just need you to
EDC.
reshare your screen. Sorry.
Yes, good point.
That's what happens when we're balancing technology on our end. So give us a second and James will have his PowerPoint back up for you. But hopefully the audience found the poll question fun and interactive.
Okay, how's that?
Yep, I can see it. I see a big crowd.
Yep. It is the crowd. Someone asked me where that picture is from. I don't actually know. It's from the internet. I think it's some big festival in Europe somewhere. So if you don't like crowds, don't go to this festival here. So Everyday Counts, EDC, if you're not familiar, I'm sure a lot of you are, but it's basically it's Federal Highways program. It's a state-based model to advance innovations that are proven, but for one reason or another not well utilized. And the goals are to shorten the project delivery process, to enhance roadway safety, reduce congestion, and or improve environmental sustainability. And this crowdsourcing crowdsourcing for operations, really fits well into the enhancing roadway safety and reduce congestion goals. EDC has been around for a while. It runs in 2-year cycles. We're just started the 5th round of it in January 2019. We had a bunch of regional summits in late 2018. And EDC 5 has 10 innovations, of which one of those is the crowdsourcing for operations one that I'm talking about here today. And to date, there's been over 40 innovations that is, over the different rounds of EDC. And it's been a great program in a way to help states and local agencies really adopt innovations in a way that's supported and well assisted by Federal Highway in what the states and local agencies want to adopt. So that's my plug for EDC. Some of you are probably well familiar with operations, also known as transportation operations, or kind of the buzzword now is Transportation Systems Management and Operations, or TSMO for short. But some of you may not have TSMO in your normal daily job duties, so this is a quick primer for you. So basically in TSMO or operations, what we're trying to do is optimize the use of the existing capacity in transportation facilities out there today. So we're matching demand to supply in real time, adjusting it with operational strategies. We're targeting solutions to congestion causes, and a lot of those are non-recurring, so it could be incidents or work zones or special events. And we're trying to basically maximize the performance of the system, both through improved safety, but also through improved reduced congestion and improved reliability. And really, when we're talking about operations, it's really built on a foundation of being able to monitor the current conditions or the system in real time. And that's this blue arrow there in our TSMO cycle, as we call it. basically any operational strategy or program has to go through these 4 steps. You have to monitor your system in real time and know what's going on, the situational awareness. You have to be able to assess your system performance and understand if things are adequate, and if not, you have to evaluate and recommend dynamic actions that can be taken, either through like a traffic management center or the algorithm, the software-based approach. And then you implement those dynamic actions, and it all starts over again. So in operations, you're continuously monitoring the system, looking for problems, and then taking actions on those problems. And it's really the monitoring step that we see as the foundation. However, there's a weakness in the current foundation of operations, and it's really kind of boils down to 4 categories as kind of the way that we see it. One, there's big gaps in the geographic coverage of our ability to monitor, and that's it's a funding situation. And for the most part, you can only put so many detectors and CCTV cameras on the roadway, and in urban areas that might be every mile, but that still leaves a lot of gaps. In rural areas there may not be any coverage at all. We also have lags in the timeliness of our information. A lot of agencies rely on 911 calls to find out if there's an accident or incident or something on the roadway, like a disabled vehicle or roadkill. And then the 911 dispatch will have to call the operations person. The operations person will have to verify it on the camera, and then they'll dispatch someone, a maintenance vehicle or incident response. And all of that takes time, so there's lags in our timeliness. Third category is really just the cost to build out. And even if you get a grant or a project to build a bunch of ITS equipment on your roadway, you get the privilege of maintaining that for the rest of its life. And then fourthly, we have jurisdictional stovepipes. So we basically have agencies that build their own ITS monitoring systems, but we don't do a very good job as an industry of sharing our information and that data. So basically, if there's something, an incident or congestion on the freeway that backs up onto the arterial manager won't know about it until it hits the arterial, and by then it's really too late to do a whole lot about it. Versus if we can break down those stovepipes, then we can share information in real time and take proactive operations. So these limitations all reduce our ability to efficiently and cost-effectively operate our system today. And I'm just kind of giving you the general state of the practice. It's not all bad news, though. There's a lot of neat things going on in operations right now. One is, as an industry, we figured out we need to do a better job with our institutional and organizational issues, so staffing, collaboration within and among agencies, building up an operations culture. There's been a lot of focus on that, kind of the non-technical issues the last half a decade or so. In addition, there's a lot of new technologies that are available today. Of course, we all talk about connected and automated vehicles, but there's also application of machine learning and cloud computing and other kinds of decision support systems and technologies that are allowing us to operate our system more efficiently. And then there's big data, and this is kind of where crowdsourcing fits in. There's data everywhere today and in ways that we've only dreamed of before. So with all of these emerging trends and operations, we're getting to a point where we're getting real-time data that's more affordable, more accessible, and more prevalent that allows us to monitor our systems in a better way. So it brings me to crowdsourcing, and we see crowdsourcing as a potential solution to help overcome an agency's weakness in terms of their monitoring. So with crowdsourcing, you can expand your geographic coverage and resolution of your monitoring capabilities. You can also reduce the time lags for real-time situational awareness. You can reduce the dependence on and costs associated with roadside sensors and systems. And then it also allows you to overcome jurisdictional stovepipes. And all of these allow you to implement more proactive operation strategies instead of reactive or too late operation strategies. So we see crowdsourcing kind of across the country. Some of the leading agencies are really telling us it's been a proven and low-cost solution for them to improving the safety and overall operation of their systems. So we're talking about crowdsourcing. What exactly is crowdsourcing? It's a buzzword and it kind of means different things to different people. But one way to think about it is crowdsourcing is a practice that has three elements to it. You need to have a need or a problem that's usually outside your organization's resources or means. Second element is you have to have the ability to leverage the collective wisdom and unique insights of a large group of people. In terms of transportation, these are really our motorists. And then the third component here is you have to have technology, and that allows you, in terms of operations, to be able to get data in real time and do something with that in real time. And so the technology aspect is something that crowdsourcing as a concept has been around for centuries, but now with technology, the internet and smartphones, we're able to utilize crowdsourcing solutions in a real-time fashion in ways that we haven't before. So if you have all three of those elements, then you have potential for a really good crowdsourcing practice. That's kind of the generic definition of crowdsourcing. So back to the question I asked earlier, if you said A 95% of the time, congratulations, you got the right answer. So, and I think the majority was 75% of the time. About 50% of you said that. Not all of you, but you were close, but not quite all the way. And it surprised me the first time I heard this, that it actually is true. The Ask the Audience Lifeline was correct 95% of the time. So if you're ever on this show and you need a lifeline, that's the one you should go with and believe the audience. It's amazing. This is an example of crowdsourcing, so this is why I'm highlighting this. It's the audience, a large group of people. You know, probably some of them are experts in some areas, but not all of them are experts in all the areas. But when you're able to leverage the collective insights and knowledge of a large group like the audience, then that's when you get a potential for a very highly accurate answer. And interestingly enough, you might think that the phone a friend lifeline would be your best bet, because usually these are the people that you hand select, the smartest people you know, right? Your friends or your relatives. They were only correct about 65% of the time. That's what the statistics had showed. So again, it's not necessarily having an individual expert helping you solve your problem or need, but the insights of a large group of people. So just a fun example of crowdsourcing. A couple of other examples outside the world of transportation is one was in 2000, they started at Stanford University a research project called Folding at Home. And this is basically a research project to look into cures for these really tough to solve diseases, Alzheimer's, cancer, and more. And if you know about the research that goes on with this, it takes a tremendous amount of computing power to do simulations of protein folding. So what they did is they enlisted volunteers across the world. They didn't have to pay anything. They were just getting them to basically volunteer their computer's idle processing power when they weren't using it through the internet. They had 2 million people sign up. It became the 5th most powerful computer in the world, and they were actually able to make some real advances into a drug and cures for some of these diseases in a way that they probably wouldn't have been able if they had just, maybe used Stanford's computers. So this is an example of passive participation. The volunteers weren't actually doing the research. They weren't actively doing anything. They just signed a disclaimer, form and said, I'll allow you to use my computer when I'm not using it. And so they were passively participating. And this is important when we talk about operations. There's examples of passive crowdsourcing where maybe your smartphone is just a probe and is being used to monitor speed, or active crowdsourcing where maybe the user is asked to hit a button to record or an incident or something, disabled vehicle on the roadway. That would be something that what we call active participation. Another example, 2008, Lego, huge company. I have a bunch of Lego sets in my home with little kids there, always stepping on them on the floor. It's a different problem though. But basically Lego, we're running out of ideas for new designs, so they outsource the ideation, I guess you could say, of coming up with new ideas, and they ask for their customers to come up with new ideas. And if an idea generated so many views on their website, then it qualified for a review by Lego employees, the designers themselves, and the most successful ideas were launched and actually produced into products. And the motivation there was the person who came up with the idea got 1% of the product's revenues. So there's sometimes crowdsourcing, there's a need to do some kind of motivation through financial incentives or even non-financial incentives, in this case fame, of knowing that, telling people that your product got designed. Just a couple of examples. I could go into a lot more, but I won't for the interest in time. But the bottom line is crowdsourcing is everywhere today. Private companies, those are the ones in black text there. And public companies, public agencies, those are the ones in blue there. And this is just a sample, but just to let you know that all different kinds of corporations, big companies, small companies, public agencies are using crowdsourcing today. So that was the first agenda item. And the next one is to get a little bit more into detail about how crowdsourcing can be used for transportation operations. And Victoria, I'll just rely on you to stop me if you need to.
Actually, I'm going to remind everybody, because I've put a couple messages in the chat pod, that if you have questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat pod in the bottom left-hand side of your screen. And if you cannot see the chat pod, please look for the circle with the thought bubble in it and click on that, and it should activate your chat pod. Thanks, James.
Okay, so in terms of crowdsourced data for transportation, there's you could say there's a lot of different sources. You could put it into three buckets, categories if you wanted to. One from social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook and the like. Agencies are great at pushing information out to their citizens this way, but also agencies are getting really clever at scraping information from these social media platforms in terms of finding out situational awareness, monitoring their system, where the problems are in real time. Second category is third-party crowdsourced data. There's a lot of vendors out there now that are willing to sell you data that they collect. Some of the examples are Waze or Here, NREX, TomTom. You may be using some of these today that can give you a lot of information on your roadways. And then the third category is specially developed mobile apps. Some agencies have created their own applications, and they enlist their citizens to download the app and report things through the app, like presence of potholes, incidents, road weather events. So anything that the agency wants to know directly from the citizens and can get that quickly. Excuse me. Let me take a drink of water here. So these are the three categories. But basically, data can be sourced whenever and wherever people travel, and that's a huge advantage. If you look at the different types of crowdsourced data, there's probe data that can give you speed and travel time on your network, even where you don't have detectors today. You can get event data, non-recurring kinds of events. You can get traveler behavior data, which can actually give you OD, origin destination information. Social media, capturing the sentiment on the roadway and agency performance. Vehicular data, cars are becoming increasingly connected, and auto manufacturers are even selling some of this data, so you can get like heavy braking information, wiper status, temperature, and more from connected vehicles. It's kind of an emerging area. And then you can also get mobile infrastructure or through the Internet of Things. And so, for example, work zone cones can share location and surrounding speeds in some smart work zones. That was actually a focus of a previous EDC effort. So crowdsourcing, we can overcome these monitoring challenges, and I kind of mentioned this before. But when you get data that can be sourced whenever and wherever people travel, you can eliminate the geographic gaps in your coverage. You can find out what happens between sensors. You can find out what happens in rural areas or arterials or other kinds of streets with few sensors. You can improve your information timeliness. Some agencies are finding that they can find out about incidents 10 or 15 minutes quicker in urban areas, even more in rural areas through crowdsourced data. And it can also improve your cost effectiveness too. Some data can be available fairly free, although nothing, as we know, is really free. The data may be free in some cases, but it still costs human time and resources to be able to turn that data into intelligence through quality control, filtering, and analysis. But the bottom line is that the data can be at a cost point better than if you were to go out and install a bunch of new ITS infrastructure on your roadways. Crowdsourced data can go beyond just monitoring. We're finding agencies being able to do quicker assessment of their systems. So if they deploy a new signal timing plan, they can find out basically in real time how it's performing, or temporary lane closure or roadway closure. You can enable more targeted and timely responses, and then get into more strategic or programmatic, or I call them like kind of planning for operations improvements. And so using that data in an archived fashion. And then benefits go beyond just transportation operations. It can really help you with public involvement through the NEPA process or looking at project alternatives. And we actually have an EDC5 initiative on that, virtual public involvement. And it can also promote a sense of community and greater public satisfaction when the citizens know that they're part of finding problems and finding solutions, and being in the loop in the public decision-making process. So let's talk about crowdsourced applications. I'm not suggesting that you throw away all of your ITS equipment and go to a crowdsourced solution. What we see most effective is when a crowdsourced data is incorporated into an existing TISMO process or program. So you have other data sources, ITS field devices, partner data, service patrol data. Crowdsourcing could be one of those planks of your data sources that would feed into your traffic management center operations. And that's where you centralize the data, you do analytics, you have algorithms and software and automated systems in place. And then that feeds into your applications that actually get into the roadway and in terms of improving reliability and safety. And that some of the application areas are traveler information, incident management, freeway and arterial management, road weather management, and planned events. All these are potential applications and hopefully operational areas that you do today that crowdsourcing can help you with. So a couple of examples here. One is Louisville metro region. They had been sharing real-time road closure data through apps like Waze, Google, and Apple Maps for a while. They've been using crowdsourced data for a while, but then they started exploring how they can use it more for operations. And so they built a tool that allowed their employees to quickly and fairly easily conduct traffic studies on demand. So what this allowed them to do is to see when they made signal timing improvements on some of their key corridors. They were able to get a Waze data feed which had some metrics like the Waze jam count metric. And basically 5 minutes show the effect of the signal retiming on a corridor. And on one of their corridors, for example, they after their retiming, they saw a 30% drop in overall congestion and 38% drop in PM peak congestion. This isn't because they had Waze data. They actually did a signal improvement there, but the crowdsourced data allowed them to assess that in a much quicker and more real-time dynamic way than if they had done a more traditional traffic study through sending employees or interns out to do floating car studies and bringing the data back and having to analyze it on their own. So this is just an example of how one agency used crowdsourced data to more efficiently assess their signal retiming. And they're looking into other uses now as well. Another somewhat similar example is City of Austin in Texas. They recently procured probe data from INREX, one of the third-party data providers out there. And the problem that City of Austin had, and many city or local agencies, is that they don't have the resources to be able to go out and do signal timing improvements as much as they like to. So they were basically on a 3-year rotation where they went through corridor by corridor, and each corridor got, by the time they went through the retiming, and they went through the other corridors, that corridor would be on a 3-year cycle of another retiming. And they used the traditional way of floating vehicle travel time runs. They had very limited coverage of Bluetooth on about half of their corridors, and then cameras or radar on even less than that, about 18% of their corridors. So with the probe data, what they were able to do is shift to a more data-driven needs-based schedule with more cost-effective method for measuring the impact. And so they were able to prioritize the corridors that needed signal timing improvement in a more strategic way based on the data, rather than just kind of a arbitrary every 3 years we're going to look at that corridor again. So it was a more efficient allocation of their resources. Another example, Oregon DOT, they actually do quite a good job of traveler information. They have quite a good freeway detector network, and they have a trip check websites, kind of their 511 system for getting traveler information out to the public, letting them know where the hotspots are so that they can make driver decisions in terms of routing and time of departure. But they still had gaps in their coverage. So what they did is they partnered with Waze here and Esri, and were able to fill in the blanks of their coverage and fill in some of the arterial roadways as well, which enabled their trip check website to be more accurate with increased coverage, and in turn enabled the citizens or the motorists that use that website to make better travel decisions. So this is a traveler information example. Going through these rapid fire here, could probably talk about each of these for an hour each, but just kind of trying to give you a little flavor for the different kinds of applications. Indiana DOT has been a leader with many things, but with probe data, what they've been able to do is they purchase real-time probe data, and with Purdue University, that this data comes in, speeds on all the corridors that they have coverage of every 60 seconds. So it truly is a real-time feed. And they created this tool, what they call traffic ticker, and it gives them real-time information about their state highway system in ways that was much beyond what their detector coverage allowed for. And it really became helpful for them when they had an unplanned bridge closure on the interstate, I-65, that took a number of days to fix. Basically kind of had a bridge beam break, so they had to close that bridge, and they created a detour route, which is about 60 miles on a lot of it was rural 2-lane highway. The first day of the detour, it took them 4 hours, motorists 4 hours to take the detour And what the traffic ticker allowed them to see is where the hotspots were in real time and how long it was taking. And so that's what the color-coded map is on the bottom there, the number of miles that were congested throughout the different days. And by the 5th day, they made a number of improvements to adding some temporary signals at some of their intersections on the rural 2-lane highways. And by the 5th day, they were really able to make an improvement so that the detour went from 4 hours to about 64 minutes, so about 1 hour. And so with the traffic ticker, they were able to track this and measure this in real time in ways where they didn't have any detector coverage they wouldn't have been able to do without the crowdsourced data. Those are just some examples. 3 others real quick. Florida DOT uses crowdsourced data with their incident police CAD data to improve the response rates for crashes and road closures. So they're able to find out when crashes occur more quickly with crowdsourced data. Michigan DOT uses crowdsourced data to populate travel time messages on their dynamic message signs. And then San Francisco MTC, that's the MPO of the Bay Area, uses crowdsourced data to increase the coverage and accuracy of its 511 traveler information system, similar to the Oregon DOT example that I showed. So there are even more examples in this, but just want to give you a flavor of some of the application areas out there. With that, I have another poll question. If Victoria, you could pull it up. It's an easy one. Is your agency currently leveraging crowdsourcing for transportation operations to your knowledge? And so I think the options are yes, no, or maybe, or I'm not sure. Just interested in knowing some of the agencies that are using crowdsourcing in Ohio. And we're always, whenever we do a webinar or presentation, we always find out about new applications. And so it's one of the neat things about crowdsourced data. There's many different ways you can use it. And if you answer yes, if you don't mind just sharing a few words about the application in the chat pod. And if you want a point of contact that we can learn for you, maybe use you as a best practice.
Well, that one person that said yes is probably going to change their answer now. They didn't realize yes meant an extended response. But no, we encourage you definitely to put some details in the chat pod, please. And it looks like the majority of the people are saying no. We've got like 72% of our respondents saying no and 17% saying they're not sure. Well, we have 2 people who've said yes now. So both of them could share details if they have a chance. If they want to. Okay. No pressure. We won't. I'm going to go ahead and take the poll question down now if you're good. Sure. Are you all right? Okay. I'll stop sharing that, and then you can put your PowerPoint back up. Okay. By the time we get done here, I will be good at this. Yeah. No doubt. And for those of you who said yes, if you do have a second, type in the chat pod and give us just a few brief details, we would appreciate it. Just that way we can share with the entire community here in Ohio. Oh, here we go. It says some of the operators at the TMC are using Waze to monitor speeds on freeways. Okay. Great. Yeah, the Waze Connected Citizen program is quite popular. It's free data. Some agencies just use the Waze app without having that partnership or agreement directly with them. But some actually have an agreement with Waze. So Waze will feed incident and other data that they have directly to the agency. It's a great tool for monitoring. And was there one other one, or? No. That person might still be thinking about it. So if it comes in, I'll definitely read it off to you. Okay, no problem. I'll keep going here. And what we found, about half of the state DOTs use some form of crowdsourcing today, and
not able to track really holistically local agencies, but we're finding lots of applications among cities and counties and jurisdictions as well. Some of the signal timing ones I showed from the city of Austin and Louisville. So you might be thinking, well, this is kind of interesting information, but I'm not sure if this is right for my agency. One way to think about it is crowdsourcing is potentially for you if your agency is using crowdsourcing today at a small scale, or maybe for one application and you want to increase its value and maybe use the data for other application areas. And I think that's pretty common when an agency may want to trial it or pilot it, do an experiment on a small scale, and then see if it works, if it's good quality data. They start building trust in it, and then other folks in the agency start learning about it and saying, wow, that's a lot of potential here. Maybe you want to do TISMO better, shifting from reactive strategies to more proactive operations. Maybe you want to expand your real-time visibility by which to operate. Maybe you have big gaps in your coverage in urban areas or rural areas, maybe on your freeways, maybe on your arterials where you just haven't been able to get funding to put in monitoring equipment. Crowdsourcing can be a cost-effective method for that. Maybe you're considering investment for roadway monitoring and equipment, but finding it difficult to maintain your existing monitoring system. We've seen a little bit of that. Some agencies actually take out or decommission some of their monitoring and detection systems because they just don't have the funding or staffing to maintain it. And then finally, if you want to shift the needle from a data poor agency towards being a data rich agency, and also getting ready for the really big data that's coming with connected and automated vehicles. So positioning yourself, start working with these big data sets, building up skill sets, building up capabilities, making your agency more into a data-rich agency as we shift our agency and our whole industry from infrastructure to information. And that's kind of the big change coming. So some potential reasons why you might want to look more into crowdsourcing there. Through EDC 5, we have a team that's going to be providing a number of support tools over the next 2 years. Webinars, we're going to be doing a series of workshops tailored to local needs. For example, maybe finding the right application for your needs and your agency, helping to foster buy-in from management, and building up skills to support this innovation, and kind of looking at a new skill set in some ways, becoming better data analysts is a lot of, I think, a need out there. We'll be hosting peer exchanges, on-site or remote technical assistance, and then we're also putting together a package of training materials, FAQs, some executive level videos, and marketing materials to help your agency, if you're interested, be able to make the business case for crowdsourcing. So if this is something that you guys are interested in, I'll give my contact information at the end, and you can contact me in any of these. I mentioned before we have a team. It's not just me, and that's a good thing. We have 8 federal highway staff at this point that are involved in the Crowdsourcing for Operations initiative. We really see this as cross-cutting. A lot of times we come and do workshops on one particular application area like incident management or work zone management or TMC, traveler information. But crowdsourcing is really cross-cutting. It can help all of those application areas. We have a number of state DOT and local agency subject matter experts on our quick call list. And then we have a consulting team as well that's helping us. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, that's interesting, but I need funding to do any of this stuff. There are a couple of funding opportunities. It's not a lot, but it can help. One is the STIC incentive program, and this is something that goes through, each state has a state transportation innovation council, and each state gets up to $100,000 per year to help standardize an innovation and actually have a list of ideas that could turn easily into a STIC application related to crowdsourcing for operations if you're interested in helping to prepare an application for that. And then another one is the aid demonstration program, more funding, up to $1 million per year to deploy an innovation not routinely used today. And so there's websites there if you want to find out more eligibility information.
James, I'm going to jump in here real quick on the STIC application. Normally, when we have put that out for the locals here in Ohio, it has come out through our LTAP center. So I anticipate that as this year progresses, we'll be looking at having some additional STIC funding application opportunities for our locals. So just keep an eye out in that area. And I would definitely encourage you to check into the aid demonstration. That's definitely a way to be able to utilize funds in order to test a technology out or an innovation that you haven't used before. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. And it sounds like you got it. Victoria there is a great local contact for helping you out if you're interested in those programs. So the lawyers made me put this slide. Should I say that? We don't endorse any products or manufacturers. So the thing with crowdsourcing for operations is usually you get into some kind of public-private partnership to some degree with a lot of third-party data providers out there. There's a lot of great ones, and so could talk offline more about that if you're interested, but we're not promoting any particular one. There's my information, James Colyar, and then Paul, my co-lead on this initiative. Feel free to contact us if we can be of help to you.
Okay, we haven't.
With that, that's all the slides I have. So, Victoria.
Yeah, we haven't had any other questions come into the chat pod, so I'm going to move into opening the phone lines up. So if you have a party going on in the background, tell them that they need to tone it down just a little bit. But I'll open the phone lines up so you can ask questions of James. And also, if you're interested in having, an on-site workshop on this topic, either for your jurisdiction or maybe your jurisdiction, some jurisdictions in your area, or if maybe there's an MPO who'd be, interested in hosting one for their coverage area, please let us know because we can definitely make that request. We wanted to at least get the topic introduced through a webinar here in Ohio, but we're always happy to make a request of our federal partners to bring more specific training to Ohio on the topic. So I'm almost done. I'm muting everybody. And we definitely appreciate your time today, James. It's, I think, important to learn about the new topics that come out through the EDC initiative, and we're really pleased that you were able to present for us today. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for hosting.
No problem. Everybody unmuted. So if you'd like to ask an audio question, please feel free. Oh, see, James, you did such a great job. They don't have any questions right now.
Either that or I totally confuse everyone.
Well, they could just be processing the data that they've received and formulating their questions. So could you click back to that slide just before this one so they can have your contact information again? That's great. Thank you. So if you do have questions later, there's James's contact information. I'm going to give it 30 seconds more here. Any takers for an audio question? Nope, we did get one more comment in the chat pod. It said this was a great webinar, and they are indeed processing how to apply this information to their region of the state. Thanks, Kate, for putting that in. Okay, well, thank you, James, for being a fabulous presenter today on the topic. And if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up things on the webinar. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. All right, take care.
Thank you.